perception of self abrogated and exonerated. One's true picture, one's true reality. For me, I always say that truth is the cause that impacts and affects the results of one's reality. A picture. I've learned that children learn in picture form. Picture form becomes a meaning. That meaning becomes an emotion. Hopefully, there is some balance that that children logically act on it. There's several words that come into play. The word emotion and logic in the balance. You don't want to have too much emotion without any logic and too much logic without any emotion, because we are sensitive beings, sensitive species. And the word act itself is an act that we really take action. The ION is that which we keep our eye on. A former understanding without the proper perception of self possibly could lead to inappropriate behavior. So if that's the case, something needs to be abrogated, to do away. And therefore, something must come anew. A new perception, truth, a new reality. But yet there must be a preparation process. One's condition could indicate that he or she needs more than what is required to come into this understanding or proper understanding of his or her perception of self. In doing so, people can extract from things of the past that which affects them presently. Doing so in repealing in order to exonerate themselves because they have the proper understanding and they want to change their ways for the good. That's very coherent. But there is no medicine, good medicine, without a good doctor to be able to administer that medicine. So now we're dealing with an administrator. who comes to correct the condition with a new method, but yet the principle stays the same. Uh, Anything that is contrary to nature. And we know that what goes up must come down, so it is a gravity pull. Someone came up with a term called relativity, which means it's all relative. It's all relative. And that's how we possibly relate to one another. Become a relative. And it is the way we connect. If we look at society of today, we see that people gravitate to those who may have material success. But there is no real actual connection in the relationship, only in the material connection. So the so-called actual connection becomes forced on it. Or the way that one can connect the relations, the human relations itself could be a force. And it could, the way that we connect could enslave each other, or one could become a slave because it is forced on them based upon something that is artificial and superficial, and that is celebrated, and that's contrary. It's contrary to nature. Some would argue against that. That's fine. So this new perception or perception of self as is being abrogated to do away and even could be done so to exonerate oneself of this misappropriate use of his or her faculties and limbs, and inappropriate behavior and improper perception of self needs a law to remedy that, because you think that this was the way you should see yourself and the way that you should come to know yourself and the way that we come to relate with one another. It's not the proper way nor the correct way. Because out of understanding comes consciousness, and when you have understanding, when you have balance, understanding speaks clearly. So religion comes and they extract from that which was before, and then they will is designed to apply and to heal the sickness of the old perception that one sees him or herself, his reality in the world. And drugs come and do that too. But yet it will alter you and creates a chemical unbalance. There's words that coming into play. I use it twice. The key to it all is balance. So the correct way to see yourself is self-governance, is to have balance, and it is in how whatever it is that's being medicine that is being applied, whatever teaching that is being applied, it should be designed to give you balance. Because if we're still killing, you know, stealing and acting in a way that is inappropriate, not proper, then the medicine that has been given to us is, or the teaching that's being taught to us, it's not proper because of the wrong perception or improper perception that he or she has of himself and that he or she may have about you. How do you deal with that? There is a term called dejuhuti, the way of words thought. So we have to deal with the thought before the improper or inappropriate behavior manifests itself. Yes. So I've learned that before anything manifests itself, it must first have order. So, what is order? And it could be contradictory what I'm saying now, because order is just understanding. Because people can ever have an understanding that they think they can justify and get away with things, justify and get away with their behavior. Yep. And but the thought, every thought begins with a seed. The seed is sown, and the seed that is sown is one's potential, one's propensity, one's capacity, one's tolerance and intolerance. And you see that when how one is taking medication, that which is administered to him, his tolerance level for that particular medication in his or her body have an adverse effect from that which is being ministered. And we see when people take other types of drugs or intoxicants, you take too much, and then you have it's a overdose, so it's in the dosage. Yes. Of what is being administered. And you can have an overload even when you have too much information. So let's conclude here. Information without transformation, and the thought. Deal with the thought, because the potential, the seed of awareness, because the first step of change is awareness, and change is a product of human effort. Now, human effort must be synthesized. You must see yourself as being useful. But how can you change? How can you give sight to the blind, and all those other terms that people use? No one will never change if they don't see an issue with their action, and the issue is character resolve. Character is the outgrowth of one's humanity, because people are only responding due to the extent and the image, or due to the extent of the damage and the injury that has been done to his or her humanity. So if no one has a desire to see, to hear, or to change, it becomes a burden. And they are seen as a burden, and they see themselves as a burden, rather than seeing themselves as being responsible for his or her own development, growth in his or her own life. Because nature comes to awaken our conscious. And once we are conscious of that, we become responsible. And we are responding to our ability to exercise logically, to be able to learn how not only to change, but to reason with one another. But be clear that in your reasoning, you don't rationalize your reasoning, whereas you start romanticizing and fantasizing and try to compensate based upon some material success that you have made, to hide behind your weakness. In doing so, you are defending your ego, and it's associated with emotional suppression. So we must deal with this understanding of this perception of self and understanding of this present reality, and knowing that we must be equipped and prepared to deal with it in the proper way, by having a proper understanding and perception of self, truth, and this reality. In doing so, we could equip and prepare other generations that they may have a proper, true understanding of self and not be driven by external therapy, but yet come to a point in their lives where it's about internal clarity. Until next time, talk to you.